Hey y'all! Today I am going to be refreshing my little custom palette with single eyeshadows. This is the most recent custom palette that I made, and I did this on camera. So there's a video of me building this palette. I'll link it down below so that you can watch that if you like this kind of video and you haven't happened to see that one yet. And I have had such good success with this one. I've been using it and using it and using it. It has really inspired me to make slightly more glamorous, slightly more dramatic, just slightly more involved, grungy eye looks than I otherwise would have. And it's also inspired me to wear eyeshadow more since I built it. So I feel like I have gotten my best use out of this and I'm ready to build a new one. Maybe not exactly similar to this in color, but similar in like the balance of wearability and excitement, and hopefully something that will similarly inspire me to keep playing with my makeup on an almost daily basis. So that's what the video is going to be. If this is your first time to my channel, I'm so glad you clicked on this one. I'm Hannah. I love beautiful things and I really like to use what I have. So I do this kind of video a lot, just digging back into the makeup that I already own and finding ways to refresh my excitement about it and continue using it. I do that in addition to some reviews of new makeup here on my channel. So if that sounds good to you, I hope you'll subscribe. Now let's go ahead and get into the meat of the video. The first thing I'm going to do is to put these away in my palettes and kind of make sure that my storage is on point. This is where I store all of my square-shaped single eyeshadows. And yeah, I think they're all here. All of my square-shaped eyeshadows singles are here. And this is where I store all of my circular single eyeshadows. All right, we're ready to roll. And I do have a pretty specific inspiration today. I have been really enjoying playing with this palette that Odin's Eye sent to me. It's the Alva 2. And I've been playing with these matte blues and greens a bit. I actually did a whole eye look on camera using this kind of matte pale teal. And it was really different for me, but I really enjoyed it. So I've been inspired by the idea of single bright colors all over the lid. And one of the looks I've kind of been wanting to do with this palette is a single all over the lid bright color look with the orange, but then overlaying it with the orange glitter. So basically this all over the lid, but then this also all over the lid, so that the entire color, the one color that's all over the lid, is a glittery orange, but with a matte base underneath it. So I've been thinking of doing that with this palette, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. And today, when I was imagining that I would sit down and do this video, I thought, why don't I use my singles to build a palette from which I can make kind of variations on this theme. And then I can put some other singles in the palette that will allow me to make this look more grungy, maybe than this palette would allow me to do. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find an orange or a couple of oranges that are kind of like this. I'm going to get my single that works in the same way that this glitter works, and then I'm going to go from there. But before I do that, the other thing that I've been thinking about is this. I have been kind of missing my shadows from the gold palette. I didn't use any Natasha Denona shadows in my other palette. The last time I built a palette for myself, I made the conscious decision to only use my free-floating singles because so often I pop out the shades in these Natasha Denona palettes and they end up populating my palettes of singles. So it was fun to build a palette without any of these Natasha Denona singles. It was interesting to see what I ended up going for. But I think that today I want to kind of do the opposite. I want to kind of take some of the shades that I've been missing using from the gold palette and maybe from the lila palette and use them in my custom palette. Now that I'm saying that, it's making me think that I'm not even sure that I'm going to end up using this because I don't know how many I'm going to pick. I'm not going to hold myself to having like a 6-pan or an 8-pan. So I'm going to go ahead and put this away and just start with pulling the eyeshadows and see how many I end up with. I might actually be building myself a bigger custom palette than the one that I've been using. Here's another thing that I think I want to do. I have been in love, like having a true love affair with this blush. It's called the 6, and it's one of the blushes that Samantha created with Ofra. This is her Life's a Draft palette. I have been reaching for this almost every day. I was thinking that if I put it in my custom eyeshadow palette, then I'll open the custom palette every day in order to get at it. And I'll be more likely to then see the eyeshadows and want to apply them. The other thing is I've been using this as just a quick crease shade often. Like a lot of days lately, I've been putting this all over my cheeks and eyes. So I feel like if I open the palette to put this on my cheeks and I end up also putting it on my eyes, that might kind of lead me to add one of these more exciting shades also onto my eyes, and it'll just help me get better use out of my collection. And I want to be doing that. That's like part of why I'm building a new and exciting custom palette for myself. I'm gonna go ahead and add that in. And then I wonder if I wanna put any of these eyeshadows in as well. I feel like if we invite this mauve tone in, then the palette that I'm building will quickly become very multicolored. And I was hoping to keep it more like grungy. It already has 2 strong color presences, right? It's got this orange presence and it's got the blue presence. I think that I need everything else to be really neutral and grungy rather than bringing in any pink. So I'm just gonna stick with adding that. Honestly, I really like the way that this is looking already. Like, I think it's come together beautifully and very quickly. My concern is its practicality. Like, when I open this, I want to feel unintimidated and like gently led by the hand to do more exciting things, which is how it was with the palette before. I had that really great, just kind of creamy, it was a color kind of like this, like a creamy, slightly metallic, deep peach. And so I was always opening it and being like, well, I can just put this all over my eyes. This is super easy. And then I would be like, oh, I could add this super shiny, sparkly one too. And then I would end up with something just a little bit more exciting. So I feel like these 2 are the ones that are going to draw me in. They're going to be the ones that make me say, oh, I have time to just swipe one of these all over my eyes. And then the orange is going to be like the look that I've been thinking of doing. This blue, I don't know. I grabbed them because I haven't been reaching for blue. I grabbed them because I've been into Prussian blue lately. And I feel like I haven't taken advantage of the presence of that shade in the gold palette. And then this I just grabbed because it was calling to me. So it's actually pretty well balanced in terms of what's exciting, looks like predetermined looks, what's easy. It's pretty well balanced. Just seeing if there's anything else that kind of wants to go in. I wonder if some blending mattes might be useful. They were useful last time. The palette that I built before, I actually got a lot of use out of this matte cream color. I always end up putting one of these mustardy shades in. I just always end up doing it. But actually, I'm not going to put a mustardy shade in. You know what I want to do? I want to pull this. This is from a Depotted Juvia's Place palette. And I remember loving, yeah, look at it. It's so kind of crushy and creamy, and it adds like a rich cranberry. And I feel like there are going to be days where I'm going to put this all over my lid. And then I'm going to be like, okay, I guess I could just add a little bit of depth to it. And so if that's like the base color, then adding that, it's going to get me like a really great glossy, easy look that'll have a little more impact. And this is one of my old favorites. Yeah, I'm going to add that. I love that. And you know what else I want to do? I want to pull a different glitter in addition to the orange one. So the orange one is just like the one in the Odin's Eye palette that I was inspired by. But I want to experiment with the same idea, but with not orange. Yes, look at that. I'm totally going to be wearing that. This is what dreams are made of. Okay, so now we have a pretty cool 10-pan palette, but I don't know if it's going to fit very well into any of my magnetic palettes. I'm kind of tempted to make it into a 12-pan or something, like make it more square or even, yeah. And if I do that, I think I'll be able to add more neutrality, like a little bit, some shades that'll be easy, that'll make it easier for me to do eye looks, like blending shades, mattes, deepening shades, things like that. But I do really like how this looks, just these 10. So I might stick at this. I'm going to kind of play around with thinking of adding some other ones in and see where I end up. Actually, let me just see first if these fit in here. And if they don't, then I'll know what I want to do. Okay, actually they fit and I just love it. I can't bring myself to sully how perfectly balanced I feel this is by adding more shades. This is going to be my palette, but let me just play with it. I'm going to rearrange. I think I might rearrange it a little bit. I don't know if this is exactly how I want it to be. And I'm also going to give you some good juicy swatches and tell you exactly what each one of these is, because I can't remember if I told you the names of every shade as I was going through. Okay, there we go. I like that for the order. Let me tell you what they all are. 4 of them are from the gold palette. I took out Python, which is this cream to matte, and this one is Aurora. Brass is a really textured one, and this one is Varus. So those 4 are all Natasha Denona from the gold palette. This one, the Depotted Juvia's Place shadow, I think it was called Nomad. I can't remember which Juvia's Place palette it was in, but I'll find out and I'll link it down below. And I think the shade in the palette is called Nomad. These 2 ColourPop glitters are Get Lost and Boombaya. And these are also ColourPop shadows right here. This one is called Meteorite, and this one is called Martian. And then, of course, that last one is the 6 from Samantha's palette. Let's swatch. This Natasha Denona shadow is a topper, and it's got this kind of, I don't know, it's like a sheer grungy black base, like a deep base, but it's sheer. So it doesn't swatch very well. And I think that's one of the reasons that I haven't used it as much as I've used many of the other ones, because it's kind of subtle in its effect and what it's for. And that's why I included these two shades in the palette here. I want to get to know them better, even after all these years. Wow, I'm getting really terrible swatches from these ColourPop mattes. They're pretty old. They're like over 2 years old. But I don't remember them swatching so terribly. I remember them performing beautifully. And it could be a thing where they perform much better on the eyes than they swatch. And it could also be that they've gotten old. I guess we'll find out over the next month or so. They're very easy to build still. I feel like this blush, Samantha's blush with Ofra, is really holding its own as a potential eyeshadow here on this row of swatches. It's not hyperpigmented. It's meant to sheer out and be kind of glossy. And if you think about it that way, as kind of like a glossy eye tint shadow, as well as a blush, I mean, it really works. It doesn't look like I've swatched something that isn't an eyeshadow here, even though it isn't one. It looks so festive, way more festive than I thought. I mean, it's still grungy enough for me, but it's very exciting overall. As I was filming those close-ups on the swatches, I was reflecting on the fact that when I sit down to make a palette like this, my goal is always to make something that's practical for me. And when I say practical, what I mean is not necessarily boring, not like super everyday, but practical in that there are qualities in it, shadows in it, that make me really want to use it and make it easy for me to use. So practical in that when I open it up, if I'm in a hurry or if I'm already wearing strong colors elsewhere on my face, or if I just don't feel like doing the most, it'll still have something to offer me. And in that way, it will make me wear it. I'm always trying to do that, but I'm not trying to make something boring. In fact, I feel like I'm patently trying to make something not boring, something that feels like it will refresh my makeup, like it will lead me down a path that I haven't trodden in a long time. And I think that in doing this exercise over and over again, like building the palette that I think I'm going to get the best use out of and want to use the most of anything in my collection in the coming month, doing it over and over again makes me realize that those two things can kind of be hard to find together in the same palette. And I think often we get tricked out of remembering how important one or the other of those qualities in a palette can be when we're seeing new things come out on the market, new and exciting things. I think a lot of times we are drawn to the second quality that I've talked about, the quality of excitement and novelty. And so we want to buy a palette because we think it's going to lead us down a path that we haven't trodden in a while. But then when the palette arrives, we don't end up using it very often because there's nothing about it that's practical, like nothing about it that's easy to use, that draws us in, if this palette had this exciting orange and this exciting glitter and these exciting Prussian blues that I've been dreaming of using, but didn't have this just straight up brown bronze, for example, and it didn't have this combo blush eyeshadow that I find really usable, then I just literally wouldn't open it. You know what I mean? Like I would think about it and I would be like, oh no, that's not for me today. And I would go elsewhere. However, if it were all different shades of bronze and different shades of blush and, all incredibly practical and easy to wear and basic, I also then feel like I wouldn't open it very often. I would think of it and then I would be like, I don't want my basic stuff today. I want something else. So I think that there are so many new release palettes that fall either entirely into one category or entirely into the other category. And when I sit down to build my own and I try to straddle those two categories, it makes me more resistant to the desire to buy palettes that are new to the market that don't check both boxes. I feel like that's kind of the takeaway for me today. It's what I've been thinking about as I've been building this one. I'm really excited to work with these shades in the coming month. You'll be seeing these shadows on my eyes in a bunch of videos that'll be coming up soon on my channel, because when I do this, I tend to then wear the palette that I've made over and over and over again. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you watching this one, and I really hope you're remembering to take extra good care of yourself today so that you can be the most effective version of yourself as you do your work in the world.